Hello, Aurora lovers. This is Dale Bone from Dale Bone Imaging, and this is Aurora Hunting 101. This is episode 17. What is the NOAA 27-day forecast? Some apps show the NOAA long-term or 27-day forecast. My recommendation is to not use it, just ignore it. With that, please check out episode, maybe I should explain a little bit about what it actually is and why you should just ignore it for the most part. Let's take a look. So first, let's start with the 27-day part of the forecast. So 27 days is one sun rotation. So if there's features on the sun, like say that really bright active region there, in 27 days it will have rotated around and be facing Earth again. So that is the reason for the 27 days. It's based on the rotation of the sun. The sun technically is not a solid, it's a ball of gas, and certain parts of it rotate faster than others, but on average it's about 27 days to do a complete rotation of its axis, And sunspots are somewhat long-lived. They can last for a month or more, or 2 or 3 maybe. Same with coronal holes. So there's a good chance when they come around that if the type of sunspot that creates lots of activity, they may do it again, but it's just a maybe. So this is from a time when the sun is not particularly active. If we look at, this is the sun right now, you can see there's a lot more sunspots on it. So a sunspot is just one little part. The bigger ones are collections of sunspots, and they're referred to as active regions. So an active region might have one sunspot, or it might have 30 or 40 or 50 in it if they're really big active regions, like probably this one that's coming around. So, as they go by, if they stay around there, they're more likely to create flare or, create flares and CMEs, but they may or may not. Individual sunspots can do the same thing. It's pretty much impossible for anyone to predict whether they're going to flare or not. So that's what the 27-day forecast is. The raw file for that is just this. For every day, it says what the radial flux is going to be, the planetary A index, and a maximum KP index. So one of the first things to note about this is a 27-day outlook. It is not a forecast. It's just trying to provide some information. And the radial flux is a measurement that we can make on Earth. It's been recorded in Canada since the 1940s, and it's a very strong correlation between it and the amount of activity on the sun, the number of sunspots. So it goes up and down with the sunspot cycle, the solar cycle. Planetary A index is very similar to the KP index. The KP index is a category, it's a number, but it could just easily be A, B, C, D, E, F, G instead of a number. It's not something that can be averaged or anything. Planetary A index is almost the numeric value before it gets converted into a KP. And it can be averaged, so it's more useful mathematically for analysis. So July 17th, they were saying the largest KP index they expected was 5. The week before, they were forecasting 6 or 7, which caused the news media to start writing stories about how there's going to be northern lights through the south. Sunspot got less active or smaller. NOAA reduced it on this update of the outlook, and all those news reports were incorrect. There was some activity, but nothing like what the news media was promoting. So even if there's a chance of a KP5, the sun still has to generate something for that to happen. And that takes 3 days, approximately minus a day or two, to get from the sun to the earth. So this is forecasting that, maybe something might happen, but if nothing happens, then there is no effect. There's no aurora on Earth other than sort of the normal level of auroral activity when this just caused by the normal solar winds. It's the CMEs and the coronal holes that push the activity, expanding the aurora further south, making it more interesting for people like me that in Canada, and it has to be even stronger to get down into the US or into, Scandinavia. There in the auroral zone, there's pretty much always aurora when it's dark. But to be visible, say, into Great Britain or further down the Scandinavian peninsulas, then that has to be a higher KP generated by activity in the sun. And if you go down here and look at the impacts, so this is, they're sort of telling where this is useful information, and in my mind is for planning. So higher geomagnetic activity affects electric power transmission. It can cause voltage spikes in power lines. It can black out high frequency radio. It can affect satellite communications. It can slow down satellites because there's more material from the solar wind that satellites moving through. That's the sort of thing that needs to be planned, and probably long-term planned. Maybe electric company needs to bring in more people if there's going to be a really big event. In my mind, that's what this is useful. It's not really useful for aurora planning. I wouldn't plan a trip based on, a KP7 event listed in here 2 or 3 weeks out. That region could go away. Who knows what could happen. Now, NOAA does update this every Monday. July 17th was a Monday. I'm recording this on the 21st. It'll update on the next Monday. What's that, the 24th or something? Yeah, it's more an outlook. It's not a forecast. And it's trying to predict things that may or may not happen on the sun, and they have to happen before we have significant aurora activity outside of the auroral zone. So in summary, the 27-day outlook should be relied on for aurora hunting. NOAA calls it an outlook for a reason. It's much more useful for commercial interests. Even if the peak forecast value, KP value, happens sometime during the day, there's 50-50 chance it's going to happen during the day and not the night. And it may not happen at all. It's a projection of what might happen given, this active regions on the sun, but something actually has to happen before we get to the aurora at lower latitudes outside the auroral zone. So, as I said, my recommendation is to ignore it. Just say no. Okay, with that, please check out episode 18, What is a Light Pollution Map? And I'm wishing you clear skies and happy hunting.